Good evening, everybody. And here we go with Revival Ragtime. This is a concert that I started performing about 3 years ago at the same time that I did a CD with this title, Revival Ragtime. And what I mean by that is music of the ragtime revival. From the time that ragtime music was first brought back to the public in the 1950s, from then until now. And that means I'll even be doing some truly contemporary rags tonight. It's something that I wanted to do in part to show people that it can be done, but also because I love the music itself. And I'm planning to play a few things tonight that I've never performed before, so it's also a fun challenge for me as a musician. And you probably will not be as familiar with a lot of the music I'm doing tonight as normally I think most of my audience would be, but here's hoping that you really enjoy it and get something out of it. So I'm going to start out with a rag that was written in the 1950s ragtime revival, and this piece of music was sent to me by my friend Rod Miller, who was the #1 ragtime pianist at Disneyland for over 30 years. And I didn't really know anything about it. He said he used to play it. It's called Ragtime Razzmatazz, and the date on it is 1958. And I played this on an earlier broadcast, and I asked if anyone knew anything about the composer. It says by J. Gaines. It turns out that was a pseudonym for Dick Hyman. So this is a rag that was on one of the Knuckles Old Tool honky tonk LPs in the 1950s. And it was both performed and recorded by Dick Hyman under the name Knuckles Old Tool. So here's Ragtime Razzmatazz. All right, there's Ragtime Razzmatazz. Thank you, everybody. And while we're just getting going here, please share the live stream on your social media if you're a fan of this music or know anyone else that might be a fan of this type of music, I appreciate it very much. And I've got a lot of special music to play for you tonight. I probably won't get to so many requests tonight because I've kind of planned the concert ahead of time, and I've really enjoyed practicing for this week. I understand the Golden Globes are going on right now. I didn't even know that. I wouldn't know anything about them anyway. So let's listen to some ragtime music, everybody, and just make the most of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you know, when I say that I'm doing contemporary ragtime tonight, of course, that term is relative, and I'm going to do another set, well, a bunch of music from the early ragtime revival, and a number of those musicians have already gone. They're not living anymore. Sadly, one of those is the king of ragtime from St. Louis. His name is Traber Tishner, and I was fortunate to call him a good friend. I really was. I got to visit him at his home in St. Louis while he was still living twice. And have always loved his music. He's been one of my musical idols since the time I first heard him play when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was fortunate to see him in person back in the days of live concerts. And so I'll play you two of my favorite Traber Tishner rags. I think they're two of his best. The first one is from way back in about 1966, I believe, and it's called the Show Me Rag, written for the Show Me State of Missouri. And Traber's music, he called it folk ragtime, a term that I think he sort of invented himself, and it's just very fitting. It's much like the early ragtime of the turn of the century. So here's Show Me Rag by Traber Tishner. There's the Show Me Rag. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, that's one of Trevor's best tunes. And I saw someone commenting about my piano. I have explained in a couple of previous broadcasts that I have a little bit of a tuning issue. I had this tuned just about 3 days ago, and I don't know why it won't stay in tune because this piano's been completely refurbished. It's a beautiful instrument, brand new hammers, dampers, and strings, and everything. It doesn't sound too bad right now. I wanted to do this special concert shortly after a tuning, and I don't know about the tuning block. That's a good question. It wasn't replaced in the restoration. I think personally, one of the main issues is just that it's been moved around the country several times now, and may have to settle for a bit longer. But well, we're going to do another one of Traber's Rags. And these are both on the CD that I did called Revival Ragtime, by the way. I'll tell you more about that later. And this has been one of my favorites for many years. And I believe Traber finished writing this in the early 1990s. And it's called Deep in the Ozarks, subtitled A Missouri Ozark Blues. So here we go. Yay. Well, hey there, David. You know, I thought that it would be good for me to play that piece, and I was going to mention that deep in the Ozarks, when Traber finished that piece of music, supposedly he dedicated it to another man who is very well known for folk ragtime, and that's my friend David Thomas Roberts, who's listening to the concert tonight. So I thought that might be a good way to transition into and play one of David's pieces. And I've never done that before. I've never played any of his music, but I came across one of his vinyl LPs a year or two ago and just really fell in love with it. And there was one rag in particular that I really liked and wanted to play. And so I wrote to David and I said, is there any sheet music for this? I don't see it available anywhere. And he said no. And here we are 2 or 3 months later, and he has written out the sheet music so that I can play the rag myself. And I'm just absolutely delighted to kind of premiere it tonight. And the piece is called The Family Line System, also fitting for someone like me because it was named after a railroad. I've been a rail fan since I was a little kid. And I had to look that up. I was familiar with the name, the Family Lines. Turns out it was a sort of conglomerate of railroads that crisscrossed the South in the 1970s and 80s. He wrote this piece in about 1980. And so here we go. I'm going to play it for you now. I just love this. It's a real folk-style rag, very much in the tradition of the ragtime era, but it still also has David's distinctive touch. Sort of melancholy blue notes here and there, but a steady tempo and a drive that doesn't stop. I just fell in love with this, so I hope you all like it too. The Family Line System by David Thomas Roberts. I've just learned this and memorized it in the last week. We'll see how it goes. The family line system. I really love that piece. There's something about authentic ragtime like that that has always captured my heart in a way that no other music really does. And so many thanks to David for writing out the sheet music for that piece. I'm really delighted, and it's just wonderful and quirky. I just realized I think there's an extra measure at the very ending of the piece, which it just kind of builds to the excitement at the end. It's great. Well, thanks again, everybody, and I think it was Dwayne. I didn't see there on Facebook. Someone was reminding everybody that I am doing these concerts for virtual tips, and I really appreciate it if you can do that. I use both PayPal and Venmo, and that information is in the Facebook and YouTube postings. And I have a PO box too, if you prefer to use old-fashioned checks. Some people do. Hey, well, thanks, David. Good. I'm glad. Now let's see what else is on the program. Aha! Well, speaking of David and the kings of folk ragtime, there's one more man who's no longer with us. I didn't get to know him, sadly, but he was a friend to both David and Trey Bertishner. And that's a man named Tom Shea. And Tom Shea died fairly young, unexpectedly, in the early 1980s. And he wrote some wonderful folk rags. They're highly individual, and there's one that has become more popular than any of the others, and it's called the Brun Campbell Express, named for Scott Joplin's piano student, Brun Campbell. And so I thought I'd play that for you now. The music was first published in the book They All Played Ragtime. It's a very distinctive rag, too. It almost sounds like a train starting up and then gradually pulling into the station. That's an element of a lot of this music. So here's the Brun Campbell Express. The Brun Campbell Express. Thank you very much, everybody. That's the real thing. One of the great folk rags. And It's so nice to read all the comments on Facebook. Thanks, everybody. Um, Let me check and see how's the YouTube stream look tonight. Not too bad. I understand there was a little bit of trouble with the audio quality on YouTube last week. I really don't know what the issue was. I checked the batteries in my microphone, they're fine. So maybe it was just the Wi Fi signal. I'm going to do sort of another little premiere here tonight and play a rag that was written by another good friend of mine that I've known since I was 10 or 11 years old, and that's the famed ragtime pianist Bob Milne. I'm not sure if Bob's listening yet or not, but I'm going to go ahead and play the piece. I'm hoping that he'll hear it eventually. And he wrote out the sheet music for this rag about a year or two ago and emailed it to me. And I think it is absolutely brilliant. It is beautiful and melodic, and it is an idea that Bob told me came to him in the mid 1970s. Back in those days, he was playing in a saloon in Detroit called the Dakota Inn Rathskeller, and uh, and also at a seafood restaurant called Charlie's Crab. And the date on this is 1975. Anyway, I don't know that he had ever written the music down until recently. And the idea is that this composition starts in the key of F, like any average ragtime piece. And by the end of the piece, he gradually shifts to the key of F sharp. So the musicians who are listening tonight, I think, will get a big kick out of this. It's really unusual, and it's clever the way that Bob did this. It's not atonal like a lot of modern music, but it's very much like classic rag, but there are just a few tonalities throughout that gradually push it one half sharp up, a half step upwards to the key of F sharp. So here we go with Bob Milne's beautiful rag entitled Snow Owl. See what you all think of this. Snow Owl by Bob Milne. I think it's just great. I know the musicians will really appreciate it. Thank you, folks. If you have requests, please do go ahead and mention a few. It's better, I think, if it sticks with the theme for the night. What I'm planning to play next are a number of rags by my late friend Ian Whitcomb, who was another one of the major ragtime revival figures. And I just adored him. I really miss him already. And I was hoping that his wife Regina might be watching tonight. Anyway, I just saw a request for Maple Leaf Rag. Maybe I will do that to close out the program or something. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. So for now, I'll go ahead and do Ian's pieces that I have been planning and practicing this week. And the first one I know by heart. This is probably his best rag in the sort of classic ragtime tradition. And he wrote this, I believe, in about 1966. It was published by the Maple Leaf Club in Los Angeles, maybe 67. And he told me that Joseph Lamb was one of the big inspirations for this piece. Well, I saw some more requests. I don't know them. Some of those obscure pieces. I have to practice ahead of time a little bit to do some of these challenging pieces like that last one I played. So for now, here's Ian Whitcomb's Sandcastle, which is subtitled A Ragtime Two-Step, and this is from the late 1960s. I think it's a wonderful rag. I know it by heart pretty well. So here we go with Sandcastle. There's Sandcastle by Ian Whitcomb. Thank you. Hey, Sue, I saw your request for Roberto Clemente, and it's funny. I don't know if you heard. I played another piece that Mr. Roberts wrote earlier in the program, just a few minutes ago, and it's the first one of his that I've played. I may have to learn Roberto Clemente before too long now. I'm sorry, I've never played it just as yet. I ordered the music from him yesterday, so that might happen. And I don't know any Bolcom pieces by heart. I also saw someone asking me if I knew any rags written by people who are close to my age. You know, so far, most of the rags I played tonight were written by people during the Ragtime revival decades ago. It so happens those are my favorites, but there are a few people, young people my age, that really write wonderful rags. I think the one that I probably respect the most is Max Kinglyside. Oh, and also Vincent Johnson. His works are really clever and brilliant. But again, I don't know any of them by heart, and I don't have the sheet music here to help me, so I'm going to have to stick to my program a little bit tonight. And I'm going to play another piece of Ian's for you. In fact, I had multiple requests for this piece ahead of the program tonight. And this is one of my favorites that Ian wrote. This dates from 1982. It's quite avant-garde, actually, much more so than a lot of the music I normally play, but I'm just very fond of this. It's called Marzipan, a ragtime confection by Ian Whitcomb. And this is on the Revival Ragtime CD that I mentioned earlier tonight. A number of these pieces are available and on that recording. And if I sell enough of those, I might do a second volume of that CD with different pieces. I could do the Family Line System that David wrote, and maybe one of the Bolcom pieces, one of Max Keenlyside's. And Dave Goodlexon asks, have you played one of have I played one of my own rags? Of course, I'll do that a little bit later. And I'm also planning a number of Tom Breyer's pieces later. He's one of the younger composers who's really quite brilliant. So we'll get to that later in the program for sure. For now, here is Ian Whitcomb's Marzipan. I said it was avant-garde, but I think it's wonderful, very haunting. It's Marzipan by Ian Whitcomb. I hope you all like that, because I'm going to play one more of Ian's rags. And let's see, I've got the music in here somewhere. That one was 1982. This one's 1983. And I wanted to do this because I love the piece. I remember playing it for Ian. And it's not on the CD, and I haven't performed it in a while. So here from 1983 is Lotus Land, a rag of Southern California. Lotus Land by Ian Whitcomb. Thank you very much, everybody. There's Lotus Land by Ian Whitcomb. I really think he's an underrated composer. You know, most people knew him as a rock star, but he was quite a multi-talented musician. And like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, um, age is relative, you know, and so a lot of these rags, even though they're contemporary in a sense, were written by composers during the Ragtime revival that are no longer with us. But I'm going to get off of that sort of depressing angle, and I'm going to play a rag for you, which I just learned this week. And when I announced last week that I was going to do music of the Ragtime revival for tonight's concert, I had about 5 emails within one day of people all over the world asking me to perform their compositions, their original pieces. And unfortunately, I couldn't do them all. You know, I couldn't learn them all in one week. And one of them is my friend Bill Rowland. Hopefully he's listening tonight. And I really do intend to learn some of his music eventually. But for tonight, I wanted to try this one, which was written by my good friend Craig Mitten in Australia. Craig Mitten, he runs a small ragtime orchestra, and I had the pleasure of playing with his orchestra when I was in Newcastle, Australia about 2 years ago. It was a wonderful afternoon. We had a great crowd. His band, they were just wonderful people to work with. They've done a number of ragtime CDs, including the music of James Scott, which you don't hear too often. And he's also a composer. And so I told him I'd try this piece. I thought it was really cute. It has a very unusual rhythm in the first section of the piece. The date on it is 2007, so we're getting pretty close to modern times here. Craig dedicated this to his beloved Rottweiler Luther. That is the dedication at the top. And he said his wife used to call the dog Loofy Doofy. So that's the name of the piece. I am going to play the Loofy Doofy Rag by Craig Mitten. Here we go. I love that, Craig. Loofy Doofy Rag by Craig Mitten. If you haven't heard the orchestra, look them up online. So, hey, you were listening live. That's great. Hope you liked it. I forget it's morning time over there in Australia. I've got quite a few good friends over there now. um, well, since I did a lively one, I'm going to slow down and do something a little bit different. And once again, I'm going back to the Ragtime revival figures. And those of you who know me know that I was very heavily influenced by Johnny Maddox. And I've had a number of requests to play this piece too. It's the best thing that he ever wrote. So we're going to do Tango Fredette by Johnny Maddox. And this is on the Revival Ragtime album. And He told me that he got the inspiration to write this one day. The melody sort of came to his mind while he was walking along the beach in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. His girlfriend, Fredette, loves tangos and Latin music, so that's one of the reasons that he wrote this. Yeah, Claudia, I knew you'd like this. and um, so, anyhow, this is the best thing he ever wrote. It was written in the mid-1990s, which I guess that was a while ago now, but I have always loved it. It was undoubtedly the first tango I ever learned. And so now I'm going to play it for all of you. Tango Fredette. Tango Fredette by Johnny Maddox. Thank you, everybody. And Oleg was commenting that this was a great Maddox rag. That's not really ragtime at all. That's a classic tango. And Johnny pointed out to me once that only the last section of that is written in ragtime, using the word as meaning offbeat rhythm, you know. That part is in ragtime. The rest of it is a traditional tango, and it's far and away the best thing Johnny ever wrote. So I'm glad you all enjoyed it. And my friend Claudia, who's listening down there in Arizona, she also loves rag apples. So I'm going to play that for you now. This is a piece that was written in part by my friend Marty Mincer, who's from Iowa, and also Professor Bill Edwards, who probably still lays claim to the best ragtime website. And they wrote this in the early 2000s. So we're getting more modern here. And of course, it's named Rag Apples because Marty is an apple farmer there in Hamburg, Iowa. And I have played this piece for a long time now. It is also one of my very favorite contemporary rags. Rag Apples. rag apples. Isn't that great? And it turns out it was Bill's birthday today. Well, maybe he'll get to see this later. While I'm thinking about it, I thought I'd throw in another piece that's on the CD I did. Another one by Bob Milne, in case Bob sees this. And I've always loved this because it was on Bob's first record that he made in the 1970s. And it's called Flypaper Rag. So here we go with Flypaper Rag by Bob Milne. There's the Flypaper Rag, everybody. Thank you very much. Yes, this is happy music, isn't it? That's one of the reasons I just love ragtime. I keep looking at my own picture on the screen and I know my bow tie's crooked. Oh well, I'm going to have some new outfits made this spring. Well, I think you might be stuck with me now. I want to play the two rags that I've written that are halfway decent. And so the first one, I mean, for the first several years that I entered the old time piano contest, I entered the new rag composition part. But I didn't do too well. That was always the biggest challenge in the contest for me, was the new rag contest. And I finally won it with another piece, but this one came very close to winning. In fact, I think Martin Spitznagel only beat me by 1 point in the new rag that year, and So let's see, it was 2007, so I would have been 15 when I composed this piece. And it's not really classic ragtime, it's more like a novelty piano solo from the 20s. And so at the time, my family and I were living in Texas, and I named this piece after the little town in Texas where my grandfather was born. He grew up on a ranch in a small town that's about an hour south of Abilene, Texas, called Novice, Texas. Novice. Novice is how you say it. And so this is called a novice novelty. I wrote this when I was about 15. See if you like it. If not, you can change the channel. Come back later. There's a novice novelty. Thank you, folks. Yes, I did write that when I was 15. And I was very flattered that shortly after I wrote that, Martin Spitznagel recorded it on one of his Rivermont CDs. I don't know, maybe he felt bad because he beat me by 1 point that year in in the new rag contest. But I was so proud of the recording that he made, and I still am, that I included some of the elements of his recording in my performance of the piece. So anyhow, that's the novice novelty. And there's one more rag that I wrote that I think really came out fairly well. And the only reason I wrote it is because I was studying at the college here at Durango, and the jazz professor, Jeff Solon, kept after me to write something original. You know, my passion is so much about older music and music that's been forgotten in the past, and there's so much of it that writing something new is not high on my priority list. But he encouraged me and helped me a little bit with it, and I'm proud of the way it came out. I did win the new rag contest that year with it. It was 2013, and I named it for the hotel where I play here in Durango, the Strader Hotel. So this is the Strader Shuffle by me. There it is, the Straighter Shuffle. Thank you, folks. And if there are some of you who are interested in trying to play those two pieces, I do sell the sheet music to those two rags that I wrote. I only charge $5 each for them. I can send you real copies in the mail or PDFs by email. Just let me know if you're interested. Hey, that's great, Wayne. It's like the famous clarinetist Ted Lewis used to say. Is everybody happy? Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. I was just checking the YouTube stream and saw a couple of requests, but unfortunately, I don't know those folks. These types of more advanced rags take me a fair bit of time to prepare ahead of time. I guess you could say I have to practice a little bit more than I do with. Say somebody here in the Diamond Bell in Durango asked me for Yellow Rose of Texas. Well, that doesn't take too much practice, you know. Yeah, it's much harder to. Oh, no wonder my bow tie is crooked. You know what the problem is? Is I look at the computer screen and it's inverted from real life. Let's see if that's better. Got it figured out at least. Oh yeah, that's better. This bow tie I have had for 15 years. Frederick Hodges and Virginia Tishner bought this for me at a men's store the first time that I ever went to San Francisco. They took me there together, and so it's been special to me ever since. It might be time to move on to the Tom Breyer rags now. In fact, the Straighter Shuffle that I played was very much inspired by Tom Breyer. And let's see, I have a piece of his I'm going to play tonight that I have never performed before. I'm going to save that for the grand finale. And so in the meantime, I'll do a couple of his rags. Let's do Blues Sahara. This one has unusual harmonies and rhythm to it, especially for a rag. It's subtitled An Oriental Foxtrot, and that was a popular thing in the 1910s and 20s. There were a lot of Oriental themed songs that were written at that time, like Japanese Sandman and so forth. And so I remember when Tom first wrote this, so I remember him playing it at the West Coast Ragtime Festival, which is still just about my favorite event of the year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will happen this year in November at the end of the year. I don't know, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And if you're not aware of who Tom Breyer is, he's probably the most popular ragtime pianist in the world in a contemporary sense. If you look up ragtime music on YouTube, there are a lot of videos of Tom playing and sight reading music that have been shared and viewed by millions of people around the world. And he was in a tragic car accident a little over 4 years ago and has never been the same. He's still with us. He's recently moved back to be with his family in a little town called Oakdale, California. He was in a sort of assisted living facility for a while and then went to a physical rehabilitation center in Southern California for a few months and was recently returned to live with his family. And Tom is still his mind is still there, but his body is weak. That's I suppose the best way to describe it. And you know, even if he's never able to play the piano again, which I highly doubt, I saw someone, I was reading online where someone said, you know, that man has already done his life's work, and he really has. He's written over 250 rags or thereabouts, and back to the piece I'm going to play, Blue Sahara, an Oriental Foxtrot by Tom Breyer. Sahara. Thank you, everybody. And hi to Joy and Jesse there in Gallatin, Tennessee. Glad you liked that one. Yeah, Tom Breyer's music is really amazing. He's an incredible guy. When I was checking up on how he was doing on the internet the other day, I realized his 50th birthday, Tom's 50th birthday, should be coming up at some point this year. I forget which month exactly. So we should all get together and send him cards for sure. And I'm going to play another one of his pieces for you. And this one is one that I heard shortly after I met Tom. I met him around 2006 or 7 at the West Coast Ragtime Festival, and I remember him playing this at the after hours party. It was just so joyous, and I'd never heard music like this before in my life. He is an incredible guy. Is also one of the fastest sheet music sight readers I have ever seen in my life. One of the reasons he's so popular on YouTube is that one of his friends got him to sight read a bunch of video game theme songs. And so those got spread all over the world. And they sound a lot like ragtime, but that's Ron O'Dell mostly, I think. But anyway, here from about 2008, I think, is Tom Breyer's Boulder Dash. Very difficult to play. It's in the key of G flat for you musicians. We'll see how I can do. Boulder Dash. That's a hard one. Yeah, I do too. Someone says, love the 32 measure final section. Yes, I do too. Jerry, I think you can find Tom's address on the Caringbridge website that his family set up. I assume that they will make their address available there to send him cards. And I found out that he had been moved from Southern California back up to be with his family on Facebook. There's a Ragtime Facebook page where someone announced it. I think it was Galen Wilkes, and the address is there as well. I mean, I don't have it on me here during the show, but we can look that up. Oh, Barbara asks, is there such a thing as a slow rag? My goodness, yes. In fact, it's funny to me that people do not think so. That's very odd. Maybe you missed earlier in the program, I played a couple. I played one called Snow Owl that's just beautiful. Right now I'm playing some rags by this man named Tom Breyer, and I don't think I know any slow ones that he wrote. He did write a couple of beautiful waltzes and so forth, but Nicholas says it is never right to play ragtime fast. He's quoting Scott Joplin, who wrote that on the front page of a lot of his sheet music, but I do not agree with that. Obviously, I think it's best to play it the way that the music was heard during the original period, and we know that from 78 records and player piano rolls, which often have tempo markings, and that's not really how it was done. I think the reason that is on the sheet music on a lot of Joplin's pieces is probably because the people who bought the music were not skilled enough to play it very well. And that very well could have been the publisher who put that on there and not the composer himself. That's my 2 cents on that. I wish I could think of a good slow rag to throw in here because I saw a request for razor blades, and sure, I'll do that for you if you want me to. Let me think, is there one more slow rag I could throw in for the night? I'm trying to remember what all is on my CD. I might just look at the contents real quickly here. Let's see how fast I can do this. Yeah. Well, the slow ones that are on the CD are ones that I've already played. Yeah, Sharon just asked me for Sutter Creek Crawl. That's a piece written by my friend Kylan De Cataldi, which I recorded it for the CD, but I'd have to get out the sheet music to play it. I'd have to sight read it, so I'm afraid I can't do it. I may just end the concert with 2 barn burners tonight, and I'm going to shut up and play. So the next one I'm going to try is the Tom Breyer piece, which I've never played before. Tom played this when he was here in Durango, which happened just a few months before his accident. I was fortunate enough to be able to bring him here for the Durango Ragtime Festival that I ran for a few years at the Strater Hotel. And Tom played this during one of his sets, and I was just blown away. It's called Spasmodic, and the date on this is 2005. Spasmodic by Tom Breyer. Spasmodic by Tom Breyer. Isn't that a great one? That's the first time I've performed it. Well, that's great. I think I'm going to just play one more for you tonight. I haven't planned a whole lot more. And since my friends Marilyn and Bill, they're in West Virginia, two of my great friends and fans, they have asked for me to play Tom Breyer's Razor Blades. This is truly one of the top 2 or 3 rags written in modern times, really a popular one and an amazing one. And you'll see there in the second section why it's called Razor Blades. This is from the 1990s, I think, by the one and only Tom Breyer. Here we go with Razor Blades. The one and only Razor Blades by Tom Breyer. I think that's about all I have energy for tonight, folks. Somebody earlier asked me if it was difficult to play for 2 hours straight. Not really, but I think close to 2 hours is good enough, and I really do appreciate it if you can leave a virtual tip. This is still my primary source for income right now, are these virtual concerts. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and your appreciation for this special ragtime music. I really do appreciate it. And I'm not sure what my theme will be next week, but watch my Facebook page and I'll let you know. And same time, same place next week, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, Sunday night. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you all, and I'll try and talk to all of you very soon. Good night for now.